So for millennia, people have struggled with the occasional threats that large carnivores pose to their interests, their property, maybe their domestic animals. And what's kind of interesting is that for the last 30 or 40 years, modern societies have been studying this conflict between people and large carnivores, trying to use science to understand how we can coexist.
So I came to Madison in 2011 to start a master's program under the advice of Dr. Aidan Treves in the Carnivore Coexistence Lab. I came from Chile and I worked as a research assistant at the Catholic University for about 3 years, where I was able to conduct plenty of research studies that involved the interactions between farmers and wildlife. So the farmers we're talking about is the Aymara indigenous people who live in the Altiplano of Chile. Aymara people, they usually raise South American domestic camelids. So in this case, we're talking about llamas and alpacas. So they are the domesticated animals from their wild relatives, the guanaco and vicuña. So the problem that they're having in the area is that pumas and Andean foxes are predating over or attacking their animals.
What is effective in protecting livestock in particular from predation by carnivores? And when we talk about what's effective, we mean what's really going to protect livestock in the long run, whether they're lethal or non-lethal methods, what's working. And what we were surprised to find is how scant the evidence is. And very little of that evidence is collected at the highest standards of evidence for strong inference. And in our field, the standard of evidence for testing a method like a non-lethal method to protect livestock from carnivores, that standard of evidence is the randomized controlled experiment. It's sometimes called the gold standard. And so what our lab has been doing is pioneering to explain to the world why we need that standard of evidence before governments are going to fund non-lethal methods or lethal methods, and before governments promote them widely. We need evidence that it works.
Based on our study in the Altiplano, we were able to collect data about, how these predation events were occurring and when they were occurring. So based on what we gathered, pumas generally attack animals during the night. So thinking about an effective non-lethal method to mitigate, and deter predators would be based on that particular, ecology. So Foxlight is a non-lethal method that was developed by an Australian sheep farmer. He came up with the idea after probably reading and searching in the literature about, habituation of, predators to different non-lethal methods, that he had to develop something that avoided that habituation. So he came up with the idea of this flashing light that has random patterns. Basically what the Foxlight does, it simulates a person walking around with a flashlight. I've been interested in kind of knowing what happens after the results, after the study, and kind of like helping out the government agency in this case, who was also involved in this research, part of the workshop as well, and also thinking about having them kind of like continuing and helping farmers to implement these lights that were evidence, we were able to show evidence that they were effective in that particular setting, helping them to help farmer to implement maybe in a larger scale in that study area.
The future of research in predator science, especially interactions with domestic animals, between domestic animals and predators, that future of research on interactions between domestic animals and predators really hinges on standards of evidence, doing the best possible experiments, so that sound policy is based on the strongest inference from well-designed experiments.